Leaders Lead podcast. I'm Zach Houston. I'm here today with my distinguished guest, John Welbourn. John, thanks for joining us, man. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks for joining us, man. It's super exciting. I've had the chance to fanboy you from a distance on a couple different podcasts and watch you as you're growing your business, Power Athlete. Can you do just a quick introduction of who you are and share with the crowd on Leaders Lead what you're all about and who John Welbourn is?
Oh, wow. How much time do you have?
Man, we got as much time as you do.
I grew up in Southern California, youngest of three boys. Ended up playing a bunch of sports and, boxing, martial arts, played football, basketball, all that, and ended up getting a scholarship out of high school to go play football at UC Berkeley. Went there, was a rhetoric major, graduated in 4 years. My fifth year, I did my master's work, and then ended up getting drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. I was the second pick in the fourth round in 99. Came into the Eagles and started as a rookie, and then proceeded to start there for the next 5 years, and played on a pretty dominant offensive line with, I was Andy Reid's first year. Then went to the Kansas City Chiefs, played on another real dominant offensive line with, Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson and Tony Gonzalez and some real excellent Hall of Famers. And then my 10th year for the New England Patriots, ended up going there for training camp and getting hurt in the last preseason game. Came home, had knee surgery, and as I was doing my rehab, I got a phone call from a small fitness company at the time, and the owner of the fitness company, CEO of their company, Greg Glassman, who's, obviously the guy that started CrossFit, asked me if I would come and help them develop their technology on how to train athletes. So I agreed, and we started something called CrossFit Football, which was a interesting project of teaching CrossFit gyms and using CrossFit methodology on how to train athletes, going from kind of general and broad to specific and very, narrowed and inclusive on that, kind of power side of the spectrum. Did that for a number of years, taught hundreds of seminars around the globe, had a website with free programming where, tens of thousands of people a day checked it. I got an email, I think in 2000 and had to be like 14 or 15 that asked, what would CrossFit Football and really Power Athlete, which was my company, CrossFit Football was the name of the program. Power Athlete was my company. Like, what does, CrossFit Football look like without the CrossFit? And I put out a article called, the Power Athlete Template. And it was really the template that I used in terms of training athletes. And at the time I owned a commercial gym. So we were working with a ton of professional athletes and collegiate and, Olympians and whatnot. And also we've always had a contract with Naval Special Warfare. So we've gone in and worked with the SEAL teams for a number of years, and more specifically in the last bunch of years, development group, kind of the tip of the spear for Naval Special Warfare. And when I wrote that article, then I had a bunch of people hit me up and asked me, hey, could you put out that programming? So we ended up putting up a paywall and doing some specialized programming, and we were testing things like EMS and blood flow restriction and compensatory acceleration and a lot of pieces of the training that I was interested in. And when that kind of grew to be way too big for me to handle, we ended up partnering with a company and putting all of our training on there. And now we do, multiple training programs and work with, thousands of athletes around the globe, certify coaches through Power Athlete with my method. And then obviously have our podcast, Power Athlete Radio. I think we have 750 episodes. We've done at least one episode a week continuous without break for over 10 years. So it's been excellent, not only for building genealogy, but just having interesting discussions with amazing people and really just pushing myself as an individual. So, And then we were doing a bunch of military contracting in 2014, 15, and 16. And we ended up moving here to Texas in late 2016. And we thought, we're going to move out to the country, West Austin, so close enough to a small city. And then COVID hit. And Joe Rogan talked about how great Austin was. And next thing you know, we had millions of people move here. So now like the little kind of country town and kind of like we were living out in the country. Now we live in like basically Austin moved us. Now we live pretty much in like what I call the Orange County of Texas, where there's like Lamborghini SUVs and, Ferraris and crazy shit driving down the road. So it's been a good move. When I was in Costa Mesa and we were in Orange County, I had my gym, I had Power Athlete, I had the shop because I weld and fab and I built trucks. It's a hobby, and just had all these different spaces. And so one of my stipulations when we moved was that I wanted to have everything on the property. So we have the house, my building and shop, and then the office and everything, which I'm not down in today. I'm sitting actually in my house. So It's been good. It's been an amazing experience. Of not only got to play in the NFL for 10 years, but then traveled the world, teaching my own seminar, which was incredible for not only ferreting out my own technology, which is really fostering developing athleticism, but all of the components of power athlete, and really just trying to influence people into the best versions of themselves.
Wow. What a story. And I'm going to start by saying that is a ridiculous beginning to of your career, and how to start it, um, and get it going. First off, I'm going to say I'm a diehard Patriots fan, and I growing up in Iowa, I didn't really have like a team that I was directly affiliated with. And, like, didn't know what I didn't know, and I was probably a fantasy football fan before I knew what like fantasy football was. And like in 1996, my dad said to me, he's like, "Dude, just pick a team." And so I picked a team, and I ended up picking the New England Patriots. Like, how could you not like the Patriots? They're patriotic,
Mm-hmm.
like they're about like as America as you can get. And so I picked the Patriots. And being from Northwest Iowa, I had no concept at the time. I didn't even think about it that they were out in Boston. And like, I was always going to see the Bears, the Lions, the
Mm-hmm.
Packers, and everyone else like that. And so it was like a horrible choice from like a TV coverage perspective
Yeah,
until they got good that year and they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers,
yeah,
which can't stand the Packers, by the way. Um,
yeah.
anyway,
There's
so
there's you know it's like in pro football, there's like certain institutions that are kind of, I mean, almost like cathedrals. Like, let's say, like, when people go to Europe, they want to go to the Vatican, and they want to see the cathedrals, and they go to Spain and Italy, and you go to these kind of like, you go to Westminster Abbey, and all these different places in obviously in London and the UK, and these kind of institutions. And I think in the NFL there are institutions and cathedrals that you get to play in, that you understand that now you're a part of the history of the NFL. One of those is playing in Lambeau as a kind
yeah,
of a rite of passage. I played, January 7 p.m. Sunday night playoff games in Lambeau, where the field is completely frozen as you're stepping through. You're breaking through ice to try to get through grass. So like that was one of those places that I got a chance to go play, and now all of a sudden you can write yourself into the folklore of the NFL. Um, you know, Playing the New York Giants in New York, after 9/11 was one of those games where we're driving in and you see guys, full kit, M16s, military, National Guard, actually, police, like as you're pulling in, like that kind of hallowed ground that you get to play in. Obviously, Philadelphia Eagles, old, the Vet was one of those places where they used to sell tickets for like $20, and you'd look up and there'd be the 700 level where these guys are absolutely shit faced in subarctic temperatures with their shirts off. So like, periodically as you travel around the NFL and you get a chance to play in these places, you get to write into the folklore. And I think that's really neat piece to have. So I was very like agnostic about the Packers, where like I wouldn't say I was a huge fan, but I always understood like the position of the Packers and the fact that
yeah,
they were like a northern team, that they're like Buffalo. They play outside. You go to Minnesota, you play in a dome. All these other teams are dome teams. Detroit's a dome team, but you go play in Lambeau, like you're playing in history. Like the fact that the NFL canceled the Buffalo Bills game yesterday is insane. Like the NFL doesn't cancel games and move games. But I think what they were more
like,
worried about, they're not worried about the players. What they're worried about was 100,000 drunk fans getting on there and this, which normally they don't
yeah,
worry about. So it just kind of shows that like the NFL maybe is adjusting themselves a little bit, that the fact that they pushed the game till today. But they
yeah,
also have a
it,
holiday today. So like, it kind of works out in a lot of ways.
yeah, exactly. Before we dive into the questions, I was watching one of the podcasts that you have posted on your on Power Athlete, or maybe it's on your own personal Instagram account, and it's about someone talking about you on the the Joe Rogan podcast. I can't believe I'm actually talking about Joe Rogan, and it talks about how you saw more guys blow money in the NFL than humanly possible, and I have a
Yeah.
story for you.
Awesome. Lay it on me.
Okay, I was at a previous employer, and we're in Lake Forest, Chicago. like Midlands area, Chicago, Illinois, Lake Forest, Illinois. And we ended up staying at the same hotel as the rookie class of the Chicago Bears.
Mm.
Okay, at this hotel. And I see all the rookie class coming in. It's the year that their first round pick, so this is like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and their first round pick was a second round guy out of California.
Mm-hmm.
And big, tall guy, fast. And I walk up to, or he walks up, and we're watching the Golden State Warriors play the championship game. And I look at him like, hey, who do you got? And he's like, Golden State, of course. And I'm like, yeah, I got him. And I'm like, hey, you want to break the internet tonight? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, I bet I can run faster than you. And he looks at me and he just starts laughing. I'm like, I'm serious. I'm like, they're going to be pissed when they find out that like some short kid from Iowa that works as an office job outruns you, and they just spent millions of dollars on you. And he's like, he just can't handle himself. He's laughing. So night goes on. We go up. I'm with one of the employees on my team, and we go up to the elevator. The night's over, and get off the elevator, and right sitting on the trash can, right? So all the rookie class is sitting there. And this book is sitting there. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then sitting next to it, I'll post in this thing, is this financial guide by this huge agency on trying to teach these guys how to, and it wasn't this guy specifically, the rookie dude that I'm picking out. I'm just telling you the story of like the whole ecosystem that was there this time, on how to spend their money and how to plan and stuff. And it was sitting on top of the trash can.
Huh, that's a good place for it.
And I'm like, so we took it because we're like, you can't make this crap up.
Yeah.
And we opened it up and we started looking at it because it's literally just sitting there. Like someone's like, screw this, I don't want it. And we look through it. There's not a single marking in the entire book that I have here that I've saved. And, or the financial plan. The person who threw it away didn't even write their name in it.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
And I know you have some wild stories about it. So do you want to share one real quick about just like the ecosystem?
Man,
or just the environment?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, like the problem is when you give a bunch of 20-something-year-old kids a whole bunch of money, their brains are not well formed. I mean, our brains don't effectively harden until about the age of 26. So, now all of a sudden you're giving 21, 22, 23-year-old kids a whole bunch of money, and people around them, might never potentially had money. I think the kids today are in a better position just because with the NIL and the way college is and social media, there's like such a high level of intelligence that you have, even to the point you get to that position. Whereas I think, pre-social media, guys were pretty anonymous. Like we would go out and we'd be at a table or, we would go out every Monday night, when I was when I played for the Eagles. So we'd go out Monday night. If we had a 100-yard rusher, we'd go out to dinner, our offensive line. And we'd go to the specific spots, and people knew that we were football players because there's a bunch of big fucking massive dudes and, a bunch of Trey Thomas wearing crazy ass warm-ups. But they knew we were NFL players. We knew we played for the Eagles. They just didn't necessarily know who we were because, we're wearing helmets. Now that I think in the social media era, the players are so much more marketable. I mean, the fact that I was watching some clips from Bussin' with the Boys, which is that podcast. One of the guys, an NFL player, I never even knew who he was. I had to go back and look him up. But now because of podcasting and just social media, the guys are so much better at building their brands that I'm frankly, I was glad in the era I got to play, but I'm also a little jealous for the mere fact that it was difficult to build yourself a brand because the NFL only wanted to put a spotlight on the quarterbacks or these other places. I mean, the fact that, Jason Kelsey is as big a star as he is because he and his brother's podcast. I mean, and now all of a sudden he's getting voted into Pro Bowls and this, and he's a good player, but he's not, the most dominant dude I've ever seen. He's a good player, but it's just amazing. His wife and this, and you see the, Travis Kelsey and the Taylor Swift thing. We're watching the Chiefs game yesterday, and every other shot was of her. I mean, it's such a weird environment that that players, we get a chance to go play football, and then we would walk out and maybe take a picture and talk to some people and get in your car and go live your kind of normal life. These guys are such big superstars earlier on that I think they have to be way more sophisticated. But that doesn't mean they're still not dipshit 20-something-year-old kids with millions of dollars in the pocket that like to blow it on random stuff. So one of
Yeah.
the funnier ones I ever saw was one of the so anybody that's from Philly or has been to Philly knows that the roads are absolutely trash in Philly. Snow and heat and this, and then obviously just whatever it is, it's Philly. So there was like these massive potholes just everywhere you go, and a bunch of the black dudes I played with, buy a nice car, you got to have wheels on it. Like they got to be 22s, 24s, 26s, whatever they are, with these like rubber band tires. So these cats would like get these insane looking wheels, monster wheels. Like they look like something out of like a RC car. And what would happen is, you're driving, especially when the weather's like it is today and there's snow on the road and pothole, you don't see them. So bam. So like guys would explode wheels, and these wheels were like 2,500, $5,000 a piece. I mean, it was nothing to spend 20 G's on a set of wheels and tires, and just exploding tires. And one of the guys didn't really kind of understand really well. So what he did is, instead of just buying one, he figured like, hey, I'm going to get a deal because it's going to happen. I'll just buy like 4 sets or 5 sets. So he got 20 wheels and had them delivered to the facility. So when we came in, like, like the equipment guys would always put, like, if you got a package or anything they put in front of your locker, there was like 20 like boxes of wheels stacked to the roof and tires and this whole thing. And we came in and he's like, man, I figured I would just like get a few extra spares. But like the dude was living in an apartment, didn't have any place to store them. Like no foresight. I think the dude probably dropped like 75 or 80 grand just on like those wheels and tires, and then nowhere to store them. So then he had to pay like the equipment dude to like store them somewhere. And I just remember thinking like, man, like, and I told him like, this could be a lot easier if you just had 2 sets of wheels, like your summer wheels, which are the big ones. And then when it gets cold and shitty, take it somewhere, have them put like normal off-road tires on it, and then pay the dude, whatever it is, X amount of dollars to store your wheels, and then just kind of swap them back and forth instead of doing what you're doing. So I was always big on like, planning and whatnot, but not to say I didn't, do some dumb stuff with my money. I'm sure everybody did, but yeah, that was one of the funnier ones I do remember. But like, I mean, jewelry and just crazy stuff. Like, guys would, I mean, people like to flash, and there was definitely a piece of like, if you're making big money, you need to look like you're making big money. Whereas I think today, obviously the money obviously has increased a lot more. I mean, but I do appreciate the style. Like, whereas everywhere these guys go, a camera's taking a picture and posting it to social media. So if you kind of look like a slob, like I was watching, like when we would do, let's say, away games, for example, the guys would bring like one suit for the plane, like one dress, and then they would wear a suit like the next day. Now these guys are like wearing like high-end crazy stuff like as soon as they get off the plane, because there's just so much more media attention. And then like seeing Patrick Mahomes, like on home games, I used to wear like a jeans and t-shirts and flip-flops, and now you watch these guys show up at home games, they're pulling up in their nicest rides, they got like this and this. So it's really added a celebrity appearance to like even just like the average player is such more of a celebrity now because of social media. I mean, I thought it was really neat. And just, like this morning when I checked social media, I saw like Taylor Swift was wearing some special jacket, and one of like I think it was the Niners player's wife made it for her, and like this. And I was like, man, this is really interesting that like, these wives and these people are like leveraging their business based upon this with social media. It's scary, but I also appreciate the kind of the hustle associated with it. Would it have been more fun? Yeah, 100%. If I was still an active player, I would have had a podcast, and I would invite all my friends to come on and chop it up. And, like listening to like Travis Kelce and his brother's podcast, like they're just 2 dipshit brothers from Ohio that happen to make it in the NFL and are just sitting there talking about a whole bunch of stuff and their parents. And I mean, it's good conversation, but those guys eventually will, probably retire from the NFL and have equally as big sports casting jobs. Because when I retired, those sports casting jobs and kind of those like media jobs were extremely hard to get. Like you had to like either like murder somebody or like let somebody have naked pictures of you to like get on the NFL Network. I mean, like that was pretty hard job. I mean, like when I saw Heath Evans get a job on there, I was like, oh shit, white guy got a job on there. So it was definitely very difficult. So, but now with with social media and a lot of this stuff, guys are basically putting themselves out there almost like pre-training while they're doing, they're building their brand, which is really easy now to get hired and get these kind of more high-end jobs. So I think that the opportunities are a lot easier. Like I'll just give you an example. So the first day I launched a CrossFit Football site in 2009, we got 17,000 hits, right? And basically exploded my business. Right, first day launched. CrossFit launched it. 17,000 unique hits was my first one. And what's hilarious is my dad kept telling me, for my whole NFL career, you should have a website. And I was like, well, what am I going to put on the website? And he said to me, he goes, well, like you should like post your training because I've always been big into lifting weights and training and the stuff that we did while I was playing in the NFL. If we had cameras and social media, would have absolutely fucking break the internet. I did. At 300 pounds, I did 10 pull-ups at 90 pounds between my waist.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, I back squatted 600 for reps. I benched 535 for a triple. Like I was, there were some strong dudes and I was one of the strongest. And like, not only that, but like when the Eagles built their new facility, the NovaCare Center, I was down in Florida training. They flew me back so I could do the workout demo for the media because I could do shit nobody else could do. And so, and the crazy part is we just never filmed it. We had 20 NFL players down in Tampa, and the workouts we did, and the running, and the stuff we did, like people would lose their minds. And we just didn't think to record it. It wasn't easy to record. Flip phones. This now with like social media and YouTube and the ability to post all this stuff. So it's funny. My dad said to me, he's like, "Man, you should have posted your workouts." And I said to him, I was like, why? I don't think people really want to know this stuff because I was living in such a bubble as an NFL player that I thought that like this is what we did and the rest of the world, I don't know, went to the gym and did Pilates. Like I just didn't realize that people want to train like athletes. So when I launched the CrossFit Football and I saw the hits we got and just this, I was like, shit, I could have been doing this for years. And then when I saw, YouTube and social media and all this stuff rise, I was like, man, like there was so much wild stuff that we did with not only in practice and life and here, I mean, all these things that like would have made such amazing content today, but like it wasn't necessarily content. It was just what we did, like when I lived in, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Philly or no, I think it might've been Philly. I think Kansas City too. I had this, obviously like you're out there wearing shirt sleeves. So you want to have like good arms and the whole deal. And I was like, what? Yeah, there you go.
We talked about this. Like, well, I mean, look at that.
You got the long sleeve. You got the long sleeve shirt on. It's keeping it up. So they would tailor our jerseys that were really tight. So I was like, man, we got to look good. So I put this program together where I would have, I think they were 35-pound dumbbells, and I bought a few sets. Like they were upstairs in my room. Down by this and this. And if I was watching TV or whatever I was doing, like cooking, like I would just go over and I would do curls. And so I put a program out for power athletes called How to Get 20-inch Arms. And obviously it's easier to start with 19-inch arms. But like it was pretty much the program I did. And people are like, did you do this? I'm like, yeah, we did it all the time. I used to do, sit-ups and this. And it was just, now I think about it where it was just things I did every day in my life. And now it would have been so funny to have to let people in on a little bit of that personality. But there's also a really kind of a contrasting thing today, whereas the NFL was very, and the teams especially, and the security guys were always very cognizant of like stalkers and weirdos and people. And there would be, I remember when I played for the Eagles, everywhere I went, there was always I would see the same people and knew that they were like stalking me a little bit. And then people would write letters and it was just weird. And so in a lot of ways, we did a lot to kind of mitigate that. And they were very, very forthright in saying hey, there's stalkers, there's going to be people you need to be private, don't publicize where you are. So now it's fuck, people are geo-tagging this, and it's completely the opposite of what we were taught. When I lived in Kansas City, I bought a house in kind of a neighborhood, And I'd probably been there a short time. I got a knock on the door, and this girl comes to the door. She was the neighbor, and she was actually, I think it was on my day off, and I was sleeping in, and somebody kept knocking on the door, and I got up, and I was like, "What?" And the girl was like, "Oh, I'm here selling Girl Scouts cookies." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, and I started talking to the girl. I'm like, "Well, like, how many boxes do you need to sell?" And she's like, "Well, if I sell X amount of boxes, we get to go to Girl Scout camp and this." And she kind of gave me the cascade. And I think I wrote her like a $5,000 check. And I was like, "Just give me like Thin Mints and s'mores and whatever." So I just gave her the money, and I was like, "Just deliver them to the house." And I was like, "You know what? I'll just buy cookies and bring them to the facility. Like, I'll help out the neighbor, and like that way I'll give them some money, and that way the kids won't vandalize my car. They'll look out for my house, and like I'll be gold, right?" Because, come Halloween, like, you want all the local kids in the neighborhood to be your buddies. That way you don't fuck up your house. So I was like, pretty good with that. Like when I lived in Philly, one of the local kids, like neighbors, he had a little 4-wheeler with a blade on the front, and he would come by and he would like plow your driveway. Right. And you'd come home and it was perfectly plowed after the snow. And like, I would always see him and I'd be like, "Yo, dude." And I always give him some money. Like, "Thank you so much. Just make sure that like anytime you see it." So the kid would like, the minute they race home and do my house, everything. And I think I'd give him like 10 or $20. Well, he did it for one of the neighbors, and the guy didn't pay him. "Hey, I didn't ask you to do this. I'm not paying you." Which is the last thing you do to a bunch of like kids that I got free time. So like they fucked with that dude. They like let the air out of his tires. They fucking stole his light bulbs. They like, put a trash can of water on his door. So when him ring the doorbell with a trash can went down. And I was like, "Dude, you got to like befriend those kids." So I write the check, and the mom comes over like 20 minutes later, and she's like, "Is this a mistake?" I'm like, "No, I'm trying to help. Like, I just want to like bring me the cookies." So they show up with like a pallet of these cookies. And everywhere I went, I had like cookies, and I was just giving them to people. I like go to the grocery store, giving people cookies. I go to work, and I gave away all the cookies. But it was pretty funny, and it was neat to be able to do some stupid stuff like that to help out like the Girl Scouts and like the neighbors. But needless to say, those kids will tell a story. Be like, "Man, we used to live next door to this NFL player, and he bought like all the cookies and sent us to camp." Like those are the fun stories where I saw some stuff with like Travis Kelce where he does good things. Like, and they shine a light on it now. Back then, like, the girl probably would have got on social media and like blowing it up, and all of a sudden there would have been a story in the newspaper about how I, sent this girl to Girl Scout camp by buying a whole bunch of cookies. When, who doesn't like Thin Mints?
I have a story like that when I was growing up as a kid. John Hardy played for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
He lived in Sioux City, Iowa. And that's where I'm originally from. And he lived down the street from my cousin. And so and his son grew up, or was just a few years younger than me. His son's name's Zach. And we would take footballs and go down and knock on the door and get his autograph and talk to him and ask to see the Super Bowl rings and, fun stories. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I remember that, what kind of that ecosystem and environment is, and when you do things like that for the kids. And it was so cool to meet like a football legend in your hometown, and it was rad.
Yeah.
God, there's so many great things we could talk about. I have one more story before I actually ask you questions.
Okay.
So I shared this with you a little bit, but we're gonna talk about it. So in my hometown area, just a couple miles down the road there, I was with my family one day, and we're driving around, and I think we went to go drop one of the neighborhood kids off at one of my kids' friends off at home. And as we're coming back, we see this garage sale, and I'm like, "Oh, we should stop." And so we stopped, and it's like everything in this house is for sale. And I'm like, gosh, like these people are like they're relocating. They have to be. And so we get out, we start looking, and like there's like all this cool stuff for sale. And like, man, this is like a legit sale, right? Like not like garbage and junk and trinkets. And we see this bike there, and my son's like, "Dad, I need a new bike," because he's got like this 18 little inch thing. And I'm like, "All right, like we'll get the bike." And he starts walking around, and he gets these Xbox like little figurines that go sit on this little pedestal, and like we'll buy it all. And then I see these things, and I'm like, these picture frames, and it's got a Donovan McNabb autographed jersey in it. Like, we're in Minnesota, and I'm like, who the hell wants that in Minnesota? And I said it out loud, right? Because like that is not a common thing you see in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like a framed Donovan McNabb jersey, autographed, for sale, at a garage sale. And I'm like, and it's got like hundreds of dollars. Like, I don't remember the price. It was expensive. And I'm like, but I don't get it. And I look over, and there's this big burly of a guy walking at me, and he's like, I want it. And I'm like, oh my God, don't kick my ass. And he comes over and he shakes my hand. He's like, I'm Frank. And damn near destroys my hand. Like, my hand turns into like a twig inside of his hand. His name's Frank. And Frank is telling me about how they're moving because he just got a job moving to the Detroit Lions as a head coach or a coaching position under Matt Patricia. Mm. And I think you said you knew him.
Yeah, his name is Hank Fraley.
Not Frank, Hank.
Yeah. I think his dad was Frank. But yeah, Hank Fraley. Yeah, so he was their center at the Eagles, and then went on and played for the Cleveland Browns. He actually had a really good career. He was, basically Division III free agent that came in and just happened to, have a lot of talent and, pretty much hit it at the right time at the right moment. So he was, we had him on our team as he was from Pittsburgh, or Hank is from Pittsburgh. And I can't remember the school he played for, small Division III school, or maybe it was 1AA in Pittsburgh. And he came in, and Bubba Miller was our center, and Bubba ended up getting hurt, and Doug Brzezinski was the backup, and he wasn't getting the snap up, and they put Hank in, and Hank had been snapping on the scout team, and he got the ball up into Donovan's hands. And, Andy Reid said, hey, you're our guy. And our job was to protect him until he kind of got to a point where he could kind of fight for his own, and ended up having a really good career. And he's a pretty good offensive line coach. He's, knew the X's and O's and was pretty sharp. So he's gone on, and I think he was an assistant in Minnesota, and I think he's the head guy in Detroit now, which has been great. So, Hank's, Hank Honeybuns Fraley. So that was his nickname, the Honeybuns.
Yeah, that Hank, not Frank. Hank.
Yep.
Yeah, yep. He was a good dude, and
real good.
Fun story just to share with you, and like random 1 degree of separation connection at that. And